Join us for an engaging and transformative workshop designed to empower your child to explore their potential and set meaningful goals for the future. Visit our website or use the provided link to purchase your ticket. For further inquiries, please don't hesitate to call or send a WhatsApp message to 063 2099 379. We look forward to seeing you there. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Tinashe Mujera. I'm an author, I'm a marketplace professional, and I'm a woman of God. I am a representation of tested faith. I represent my healed wounds that left ugly scars. This is the Faith in Action podcast that has been created to help you find the journey to your true self through conversations and lessons shared. Good day. Hello. How are you, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of the Faith in Action with me, your host, Tinashe Mujera. I'm excited as usual. You know the statement. I'm excited about this episode. Guys, I cannot believe that it's June already. It's 6 months into the year, meaning we've reached the halfway into the year. And I can't believe how time has just flown by. It's just now in December where I was busy writing down my vision board and preparing for year 2024. And here we are already in June. I'm super excited, however, and I hope you guys are still sticking to your goals and that all that you had planned for year 2024 is coming to fruition. I'm excited because June is Men's Health Month. As you all know, we were in the month of May and we did a whole lot of spotlighting in terms of, highlighting some of the women's stories that really inspire and bring faith into our own lives, or kind of bring motivation to our own lives. And because it is Men's Health Month, I really just thought we needed to also put a spotlight on the men and just understand what's going on in their world and bring in guests that are men so that they can tell us about that world and not us telling them about the world. So I'm really excited because we are joined by a phenomenal being, a phenomenal man who's a father as well. His name is Bogosi Motshegwa. I hope I pronounced that right. He is a chief strategist at Thinkerneur, and he is also the founder of One Human Summit. He's a dad. He's got 12 years experience in the advertising and marketing space, and he really enjoys a lot about entrepreneurship and marketing in general. Ladies and gents, help me to welcome Bogosi to the Faith in Action podcast. Bogosi, welcome.
Yay! No, thank you very much. It's a drum roll. Yeah. Being it Men's Month, whatever. So it's appropriate. The drum roll was really appropriate. Thank you for having me.
A pleasure. It's an honor to have you join us. I must say, thank you for coming through and sacrificing your time to really just come and share your wisdom, your vulnerability, your authenticity, and just your part of your story that makes you you. Of course, today's episode is themed fatherhood. Redefined. I think that's heavy. I don't know how you feel about it, but I was looking at it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is heavy. We're opening up the month of June with a bang. And you know what? What better way than to have a father come and speak to to the people and bring some insights in that space. Because if you don't mind, please just give a brief introduction of yourself. I know I tried. I might have left some of the things so that the people can know who you are before we get into the real stuff.
Thank you very much. First of all, I think it's an honor for me to be here. I really appreciate the invite, and I'm so happy to be here. My name is Bogosi Motshegwa, and as you mentioned, I'm Chief Strategist. So my profession, my world of work, my professional life revolves around advertising and marketing. So I've got you know, enough experience and history in advertising and marketing, building brands, doing strategies, and doing a number of exciting stuff. But now, currently, I consult through my consultancy called Thinkerneur. So we provide brand, marketing, creative, and communication strategies. I also have a platform called the One Human Summit, which is about empowering extraordinary humans, humans of significance, humans of impact. The difference between the One Human Summit and any other summit is that we primarily focus on a single individual. So, you know how conferences or summits would generally have like a plethora of speakers and a gazillions of
Mm,
topics. We just
yeah.
focus on one person. So, if you are there for that particular individual.
Oh wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then,
That's
of course,
amazing.
yeah, we I worked on the African Bank campaign. We launched last month. So I'm pretty excited about that one.
Well done. I've seen it. Amazing work.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that beautiful introduction and just to let the people know who you are and what you represent, but also that they must know that you're a dad and a father. And that's why we wanted you here. So it's not
Mm.
only those fathers that are not doing anything really, it's the fathers that are actually busy in the field, but they're also dads and really truly represent fatherhood. So once again, excited about what we're going to dive into. I just want to ask you a random question before we start, and
Mhm.
um, on fatherhood. And I just want you to share with us what was a surprising aspect of fatherhood for you? Just one random one.
She's a surprising random moment of fatherhood.
Mm,
I think I would have to say, um, yeah, it's definitely this one because this is the one moment I usually talk about the most.
mm,
As a father, as a parent, you actually never know whether your kids are actually hearing you or they're listening. There are those moments when they're actually two. They're actually two. I think I had picked up. I was picking up my son from school, and then randomly out of nowhere, he said, when I grow up, I just want to be exactly like you.
oh
Um,
man.
so
Oh
yeah, that was
man.
that was that was that was that was beautiful. It's exactly.
Shoot,
It's like I want to do what you do.
man.
And because I'm always at school, I think I've become the dad of the school. When I come, all the kids they hello, 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 bye bye, bye bye. So cute.
Yeah.
But the one that really stands out was when so I usually talk to him right about stuff, and I try to instill some values in him, and I speak to him. One of the things we spoke about, he's 9 by the way, and I think at that time he was 8. I had spoken to him about this concept of time.
Mm,
So as a child, you play. He just wants to play, 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 play. So
yeah.
I spoke to him about the concept of time, and I was like, listen, there's a time for everything. And if you use your time wisely, you can actually do everything. In the
Mm,
context of him, everything is watching TV, going to school, doing homework, playing outside, doing all of these things. But he wants to
mm,
over index on the playing.
mm.
Um, and one day he came, he was like, you know what? You were right. I was like, what?
Sure,
I have never told my dad that
sure,
you were right. And I
sure.
have so many moments of realizations. It's so interesting when you grow up, ne? When you grow up, you have these moments of, my dad was right. But I've never
Mm,
told him, you know?
yeah. Mm,
So to hear him go, actually, you were right. I was like, wait, what? First, what are you talking about? And then he was like, no, you are right.
wow.
There, there is time for everything. So on that
Sure.
day, he experienced everything. He did everything. He watched TV, he played, he did his homework, he went outside to play in the swing. He did everything. So that
Wow.
day was the moment where he realized that actually I can do everything. I can do my homework, I can play. So for me, it was like, oh, actually, this thing is it's working. Whatever it is
Mm,
that I'm doing, it
mm,
seems
mm.
it
Definitely.
seems
Sure.
to be working. So I think that was, yeah, that was one of
Mm.
two proud
Wow.
moments.
Wow. Dad, when I grow up, I just want to be like you, like just like you.
Right.
Amazing. I mean, that's just beautiful to hear. I mean, if my daughter would say that to me, goodness, I don't know what I would do. So that's really amazing. That's powerful. And I think, one of the things is, children learn from what we do, not really what we say. So I must say,
Mm,
I would, yeah, I can attest that probably you also manage your time well, and he sees you doing it, and I think then something landed on him that day. It's like, let me try this out, because
mm,
indeed they hear, it's not the words, but it's the actions that land for them. I want to
amen.
read this that I got from one of your posts,
Mm,
and this is what you say. Um, Nothing, sorry, nothing is ours to own, nor is it ours to withhold. As such, when given opportunities, it is not that we deserve them, but rather that it is the divine intervention that has
mm,
made all things possible and so obvious to the naked eye. It feels, and I won't go on and on and on there, but I think that just stood out for me, and I found that very, very touching and moving, because it
mm,
takes me to the next question that I want to ask you about, which obviously represents faith. And from reading that on your post, I mean, I could tell that something really struck on that moment and day, or in that moment and on that day, regardless of what you were going through or what was happening. And it
mm,
takes me to, this question of fatherhood, and just what does fatherhood for you mean? And how is it shaped you in the context of your faith?
mm. Did I say that? That was so powerful. That was so profound.
Mm, it was. It really was. Really was. Yeah.
Interestingly, I've never, for the longest time as an adult, I wasn't into this thing of faith. And I think that came from the experience that I had growing up. So, we went to a lot of different churches, and I didn't like that.
Mm,
We moved around. We were nomads when it comes to this religion, you know. So then growing up, I was like, when I am old enough to make my own decisions, I'm not going to go to church.
mm,
So that was the thinking process there, to be like, what is it that we're looking for that we can't find in this
mm,
church and that
mm.
church? So it didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But I think over the last 2, 3 years, just we know it, but I think we need moments of, realizations or epiphanies where we are reminded of how vulnerable we are.
Mm.
you know. So I think having gone through moments of vulnerability and, being able to get out of those, it's when I realized that actually, it is not of my own doing.
Yeah,
Sometimes when you get out of something and you practically or materially did not have any influence of you getting out of a situation,
sure.
I think that's when I realized that we know, but I think hence I'm saying I think those moments are necessary when we go
Yeah,
through stuff, and then we get
yeah.
reminded that
Mm.
there's a bigger power at play. There's
Yeah,
something bigger than all of us. And I think in terms of fatherhood, I don't think let me speak for myself, I wouldn't have been able to go through the things that I've went through, if it wasn't for that pillar, relying or leaning on it,
mm.
this faith pillar, leaning on it for moments when nothing makes sense,
Mm.
words cannot be put together. There's nobody,
Mm.
the moments where it's just you,
Mm.
and the troubles of the world.
Yeah,
That's when you realize that you need something that is intangible but
yeah.
highly impactful, you know, to get you through the worst of the worst.
Mm. Mm. Sure, sure. That's deep. That's deep. I'm loving what I'm hearing, definitely. And it's all there, to be honest, because indeed, like you say, when the moments where it's just you and you alone, and all the troubles are
Mm,
almost just
mm,
coming on you, and you don't know what to do. So
mm,
I can definitely relate. And
mm.
you know, again, on still on fatherhood, and reflecting on these experiences, and some of the things that you're highlighting now, a high level, what's the biggest lesson you've learned on this journey of fatherhood, and how have these lessons impacted, or this lesson, how has it impacted your personal growth, your interactions with others outside, of your family, and again back to your journey of faith? Like, what are those lessons?
Yeah, I think that's sort of like what I spoke about previously is the recurring theme of, realizing that one is not in control, and therefore,
Mm.
you know, we can only do our best, and um, when I started paying attention and listening to the the universe, the closed universe, meaning the household.
Mhm.
The saying that, babies are not born with a manual. There's no manual to this thing. I
Yes.
believe there is, but we just don't choose. We choose not to listen.
Mm.
Um, it's like when a phone comes with a manual. y- You know, I don't remember reading a phone manual. We just
Yeah, sure.
and the key there is that the phone will tell you. It's like a car. When a car breaks down, the car tells you.
Mm.
So even children, they operate the same way, which is why I believe the manual is built in. The child will tell you from the moment they are born. When they're hungry, you will know. When
Yeah.
the diaper is wet, they will know. You will know. And as such, as they grow, they tell you how
Mm.
their energy, how they feel. Sometimes they overtly call it out, but sometimes you can feel it, you can see it. So the biggest lesson has been being able to listen, and not say he's just a child, to try and listen to him say stuff. Even when he was 5, he would say, I don't like it when you do, that. It's like you have to listen.
Yeah.
You have to you have to listen. So for me, I think the biggest realization was that there is a manual. The manual he's 9 now, he can talk. So, you know, he is the walking, breathing manual to his being.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, I think not being in control and then realizing that the answers are actually within him.
mm,
It's like, so he's been having troubles at school, for example, and he's been struggling,
mm,
focusing, concentrating. So one could then say, hey, this is what I need to do as an adult
mm,
in the room. I need to do this, I need to do this. But then one day I asked him, I was like, what's going on? Why are you not listening? Why are you always in
mm,
trouble? It's like,
mm.
why don't he doesn't finish his work? He's like, and then he's like, no, hey, the thing is, for me, it feels like we're doing the same thing every day. So, so it's like in maths, the sums are different, but it's the same thing,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah. Little people. Mm-mm.
You know what I mean? Like, okay. So then going back to this idea that kids actually come with manuals, and the
Mm,
manuals talk, you don't read them. Or you can
mm,
read things that you can observe, but you
mm,
have to listen to them. So then that gave me insight into where the challenge might be, you know.
mm,
Uh, so
mm.
then that means we have to address this thing of, it's the same thing. Why is it the same thing? Why you have to do, then it brings us into another different world from a life perspective. It's a life principle. If you want to lose weight, you need to do the same thing over and over
Mm,
and over and over and over and over again. You have to be consistent.
mm,
So now it starts to bring in learning opportunities to say, no, the reason you do this is because you need to practice. Once you practice, you start to understand the principle. And once you start to see the principle, you start to see the patterns. And then
mm,
it's like it's a learning
mm.
process, part of the
Sure,
learning journey. And in life,
sure.
we're gonna do the same thing over and over and over. How many Mondays have we had? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, so by listening and engaging with him, you start to, you can actually learn, and also find the answers, to
Wow.
the, as opposed to saying sitting alone in a corner as an adult to say, hey, he's not listening, he's not listening. Okay, we need to find a educational psychologist. Hey, it's like, the answers are there. I think, yeah, it would be those two things. The third one would be, there's a difference between being present and being
Mm.
active.
Wow.
And I've seen it where I've been present physically, but I've been too busy
Mm,
with work, where I wasn't active in the things that
mm,
he's involved in, the school and whatever. And then it hit me that, ish, just being around also is not enough. Just being
wow.
around, saying I'm there, and they can see you every day, you are there, but mentally, psychologically, spiritually, not being there is possibly maybe far worse. Because then you've created, the with you present, the expectations, and then
Mm,
with you not being active, you are on a daily basis dismantling those expectations. And then what it does then is it makes him lower the expectations within your presence. So
mm.
in fact, you're probably better off not being there, because then you're not setting high expectations that you're not gonna deliver on. So
Totally.
yeah, I would say that would be the third one. Presence versus being active. You have to do both. You have
Mm,
to do.
mm. Sure.
And also the fourth one,
Yeah.
I think this thing has given me perspective on work.
Mm,
Before I met him, I used to emphasize that work is hard, work is difficult. Now the whole thing is flipped. What it has
wow.
done, living with him, it has given me perspective on work. Now work is like, actually, give me that project, let me do it quickly, so that then I can focus on the most important job, which is being active.
Mm,
So to be honest, I it's such, I don't know how to explain it, but
Mm.
uh, when the perspective has shifted, solving for work, it's like, okay, let's just do this thing. It's easy. Like, I think that's the best way I can put it, is that work has become easier because
Wow.
of I've now said in my mind that actually the biggest challenge is raising him. Making sure that he's mentally, physically, emotionally okay. Therefore, everything else is like, can we just do this thing quickly? Come on, guys.
Wow. Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. That yo, that wow, that's beautiful to hear. Like I'm so wowed. You could go on and I'm just, hearing all these nuggets of wisdom. Thank you for sharing that and these valuable lessons that you're sharing because it's almost become a norm that these are the excuses that we get. I'm a father, don't you understand? I must provide. So I must go. Therefore, work comes first for me because you say I must provide, and that just becomes the song and the noise. It's actually become so much noise. Now, hearing this different perspective, like work has become easier. I just want to get this project done and then focus. Yeah.
Correct.
Wow. These are the stories we need to hear. And this is, I think,
Yeah.
what men and other young, young men that are also preparing to be fathers should be hearing, to be honest, from people like you who are walking and we've walked the journey too. Yeah.
No, I
Now,
will. Before we move on, just on that, I used to be on the flip side of that, where
mm,
work was everything. Actually, I think that. Hmm, I need to think about how I phrase this. So I
mm,
used to be on that other spectrum, where it's like
mm,
work, I need to be the provider. And I think that also contributed to this is what I mean about phrasing it. I used to, I think that contributed to the demise of my relationship with his mother. So we ended up separating. When I was with her, with his mother, I was the provider. Work was everything.
mm,
So at the time she wasn't working. So then the scales were tipped onto me being the provider.
mm,
So I had to go in. I had to do the things. I had to be the provider, find. And at the time, she was not working. So you can imagine
mm,
she's not working. So I'm providing for him, for my family,
mm,
sometimes for her family as well. So there was a lot of pressure, which required me to be fully focused on the work.
mm,
I was always um, away or doing work, and at that time it made sense for
mm,
me to approach work in that way because I had left my full-time employment, went into freelance. And with freelance, you're only
yeah,
as good as the last project. Therefore,
yeah,
it's not the same as being full-time employed where you can get onto a project, mess it up, they'll say, okay, let's move you to the next project. You move on to the next project, you improve, that's like
mm,
everybody's happy. Or there's outside when you're freelancer, there's no such thing as, oh, here's another one. It's like if you mess up on this one, they might gladly pay you and say, oh, thank you very much, we really loved your work. That will be the end of it.
mm,
So to avoid that and to mitigate against not performing when I'm on my own, I spend more time at work refining, crafting, making things better. I would do a presentation and then I'll be like, no, it's not good enough. Um, but generally, there'll just be more work because
mm,
as a freelancer, you're on your own. You have to do
yeah,
everything. From a strategy perspective, you would have to do the research across different aspects. If it's from a consumer perspective, you have to do research. From a category perspective,
yeah,
understanding the business, the brand, all of these things. So I was away a lot of the time. So now I live with him full time and I still do those things. But
mm,
now my perspective is different. So the idea that work is tough has been significantly minimized,
mm,
um, compared to what is actually tough. It's
mm,
taking care of another human being, being responsible for how they feel, how they think, how they go to sleep, when they wake up. All of these things, and it's tough, eh?
it is.
It's it's tough because then I have to think about all the projects. that I do
mm,
have their own things. And then there's the stuff where I now need to be not only present, but active
mm,
with
mm.
work, weekly tests, assignments,
Goodness.
projects, which is why I'm like, I don't know how I do it. I just see it's the next day. And then I'm like, here we go again. So I do not attribute that to, my intelligence or my strength or, I'm just grateful. To that quote that you read was purely just
Mm,
about gratitude, because at any moment, all of this could be taken away.
that's right.
And at some point it was taken away.
Mm,
It's so interesting. There was a point where I didn't have money,
mm,
and the people that were when I ask people for money, they're like, "Is
mm,
this a joke?" Or you need
mm.
money.
Sure. I know what you're talking about.
I'm like, what do you mean?
Sure.
I do need, like, I kid you not. This time last year,
Mm,
I was no money, no electricity, being
mm,
evicted. You could not be. So even for me, it's like
wow.
it can only be God's work. Where
Mm,
this time last year, I'm not talking about 4 years ago, like this time last year, luckily, we had, I'm being facetious with this thing about luckily we had load shedding, because it worked in my favor.
mm,
When we didn't have electricity, I attributed it to, load shedding.
mm,
Just, no,
mm,
this is load shedding. And
mm.
then one day he peeked through the windows like, no, but those other places, they've got electricity.
And
Then I was like, you know how this thing, when the power comes back, it comes back and then it just messes
sure,
things up. It's like, so something burned or whatever. And then it's
sure.
like, did you send them an email to let them know, Pella, they need to fix
Mm,
it? I'm like, hey, this boy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They're grown. Yeah,
No,
sure.
they grown. They grown. So if we went through some tough times, difficult times. It's been insane. There was a time where, um, I remember there was a moment, and I think that was the moment where, another epiphany where I think I had like 100 rands. With that
Mm,
100 rands, I needed. So the one thing I tried to keep normal during that time was him going to school,
mm,
um, going through all of these things, evictions, no work, um, you know,
yeah.
no food.
Mm,
I remember I had 100 rand. With this 100 rand, I either not either. It was an and thing where I needed to pour petrol, I needed to buy food, I needed to buy winter clothes, you know, I needed to buy airtime, I needed to buy data, because even when you don't have anything, you're still in the hustle, right? You still need
yeah,
to have
yeah,
meetings, you still need to make
yeah,
calls, you know. And then, yeah, there was this moment where we're just sitting in the car, and then he was like, "Ish, I wish I had a 20 rand." I was like, "For what?" He's like, "No, so that I can give it to you, so that then you can do what you need to do."
man.
It's like, yeah, no, that was quite a moment.
Yeah,
And for me, it was I realized that, he can actually see what's going on.
what's going on? Mm,
He
mm,
can actually see what's going
mm,
on.
mm,
Um,
mm,
so yeah, it's so, this conversation of where I am and where I come
mm.
from. So I've gone through the different phases. I think I'm only where I am because of all these other things, that I've gone
Sh-
through.
Wow. Goodness. We need tissue now because wow.
Yeah,
Wow, because this is deep and Thank you. Thank you for opening up and sharing these moments, because it's really important that people hear this. And I think most times, we often just want to associate all of these things with women and how we are super women, how you can just be an independent mom and still take care of the kids. And we don't realize that men too are out there doing the same and going through the very same, and I'm sure even harder, because for you guys, that nurturing spirit is not a natural thing than for us. But also, I mean, to be honest, bills are bills. Things need to get paid. They need to get paid. School fees is school fees. It's not waiting for who's gonna pay or where is it come. It needs to be paid. And these are some of the struggles. And I think, oh, being an entrepreneur even makes it, worse. But I think it's these beautiful seasons, to be honest, that make
Mm,
us, that also make them,
mm,
because I often say it's important that they understand when I say, I'm speaking on my daughter now, that she understands when mommy says, I don't have money, Atara, and I'll tell her, I don't have money today. So we're not buying ice cream after school just because you want McDonald's or ice cream, because mommy
mm.
actually doesn't have the money for that. When mommy
That's
has money, we will buy, so that they understand these things that sometimes we don't have and sometimes we have, and life does happen to all. So, wow, thank you for sharing that piece. I think, as you were speaking, you really just knocked something in me, and it's about the emotional aspect from a father, because people almost think that men don't have emotions. I don't know. It's almost like you
mm,
guys it's like when it's a man, they don't understand because they don't have emotions. And then we also often hear, well, not often hear, we know that it is a man again that brings identity to children, to a child.
mm,
And that father figure is not present in their lives. There's some identity crisis, that tends to, there's a trauma, and I speak from my own experience too, there's that gap that still needs to be put together because of the lack and absence of a dad in one's life, particularly girl children, but more so even with the boy
mm,
children. And I think that emotional aspect and that identity aspect almost work hand in hand. Like you were
mm,
saying, it's you being active, which
mm,
I would take as being emotionally present, that
mm,
then makes a difference, instead of just you being there at the sports stadium, but you're on your laptop working and you're
mm,
not actually part of the game and cheering, the child on and calling out his name. So
mm,
I just want to understand from your own experience too, in terms of that emotional aspect versus identity and that active piece that you spoke about.
mm, mm. Yeah, no, that's a that's a very powerful, heavy question. Um, yeah, and I think the from a professional perspective, um, I've got this title that I've given myself. It's called the FTO. Um, and the FTO is figuring things out. I like that from the principle of, not assuming that you know everything.
Mm,
Um, I think I was just not confident, to call myself a CEO.
mm,
Because I feel like actually as a CEO, I think you need like lots of people around,
mm,
to employ a lot of people before you can call yourself a CEO.
mm,
Um, that was my way of, you know, playful, but in truth is that that's the work. I think our work primarily is about figuring things out,
mm,
especially when you talk about imagination and creativity.
mm,
Those two things alone means the answer is not really there, so you need to
mm.
figure it out and find it and manifest it.
True.
And I think therefore the same principle applies in fatherhood. That what you speak about, the identity and the emotional stability. I think it's a
Mm,
figuring out role, and what that means, I think, for me is that it also means there's room for learning,
mm,
and wherever there's room for learning, it means there's improvement. Um,
mm,
I think I've seen the different phases emotionally that I've been in at different stages of success, so to speak.
mhm.
When there's nothing, it becomes a highly stressful, um, you know, state, which then filters through into other things as well.
Yeah,
It also has impact on him. I've seen where things are okay financially. I'm also a little bit,
yeah,
relaxed.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I can
and then
relate.
and when things get tough, it's like I also get tough. It's like I
Yeah,
would complain about things that I wouldn't necessarily, complain about. You know. So yeah, I think for from an identity perspective, I think it comes from a rational perspective as well. In terms of the discipline side of it, where I tend to be a little bit more disciplinarian with him about certain things. And it's a it's a it's a it's a it's not an easy thing,
yeah.
if I can, it's not an easy thing emotionally to
Mm,
be,
mm,
emotionally healthy or sound.
yeah,
And I think it maybe comes from the pressure as well,
yeah.
where where I find that emotionally, I will be off balance because now there's pressure, there's work pressure, and then there's the things that it's almost like you have to perform wherever you are. When you're at work, you have to perform, doing a presentation where you're not emotionally there, but you have to
Mm,
deliver this presentation. And I
mm,
see those kind of things as performances usually,
mm,
um, because you're
mm.
not really you when you
Shame.
when you when you present.
Mm, mm,
So yeah,
mm,
I don't know
mm.
if I've answered your question.
You
Um,
definitely.
yeah, or maybe you could ask me again or more explicitly. But yeah, that's
Mm,
what I would say, with regards to the identity and the emotion. I think I would split it into the two themes we spoke about, being active, being
yeah.
present. That would be sort of like the identity thing. Um,
Mm,
you know, and part of the identity thing for me speaks to being able to know him. So
yeah.
the reason I live with him, I decided to live with him was that because um, you know his mother and I separated. My biggest fear was him being raised by another man, and you know you meet your child and then they talk a certain way, they say
Yeah.
certain things, and then you're like, who are you?
Yeah.
So so
Yeah.
that's from an identity perspective. I think for me it was really important for me to be present, right, and I suppose active as well, me ensuring that. So yes, I think the influences majorly come from outside. External factors, external forces will always play a major role. But I think me being there every day, reminding, instilling, reinforcing certain values, certain ideologies, ways of thinking, ways of doing things is important. The
Mm,
trick then is making sure that there's a beautiful balance or harmony between the identity aspect and the emotional side, making sure that I do not necessarily cause disruption or emotional turmoil
mm,
with my presence. Um,
mm,
so I think it's something that I've become conscious of, which is something I'm working on as well. It's hey, this job is tough.
Yeah.
Th-
Yeah.
this job is tough.
You definitely have answered me, and thank you for really unpacking that for us, and for the listeners as well that are hearing you speak. I hope that you are also catching on to something here, and picking up on the wisdom that Bogosi is really sharing with us. I think these are powerful insights that all the men, all the fathers really need to grasp and hold on to. I want to just ask again on that. And you spoke about, when the pressures come, how, it's like, and I can relate because when I'm under pressure as well, it's like everything must just be under pressure. Like I'm shouting at her. I'm saying, do this, just, it's, it is what it is. And unfortunately, we're human. But I think that the important aspect and what I'm also learning is that regulation piece. And now also tying it back to, this mental health month of June and that pressure. I want to just hear from you. What do you do to regulate? What are some of the things that you have done for yourself that help you to almost, stabilize yourself when, this pressure comes? What do you do to ease it off? How do you manage the emotions, or what is that, because I mean, this is a full-time job, but what do
Mm,
you do as well to help you? Because they say you can't pour from an empty cup, right?
mm,
Because you also need to be filled. So what are some of those almost like nuggets, or almost like, what do you do? Maybe it's your workspace, maybe you get into the creative space. I don't know what you do, but you tell us, what do you do to regulate?
all right. Before I do that, I want you to see him. Hosi, Hosi, Hosala. Can you see him? Yeah.
Hey,
Hi.
how are
Yeah.
you?
Hi. Good.
How are
Yeah.
you?
Good.
Kuluma.
Good.
Are you good?
You should hear him in the field of play. Yes, yes. He's
Yeah.
got a good voice, and now he's acting like he's shy.
It's like, who's this on camera? What's going on? Good to meet you, Hosi. Is it Hosi?
Hosea, hello, bye
Good
bye.
to meet you, Hosi.
Need you.
Bye.
Bye.
Amazing.
Close the door.
Oh,
So
oh,
yeah, so
oh.
I've been blessed. I don't do much in terms of activity, doing these things. I think I've been different like that for a very long time, where I don't necessarily need stimulation of doing things outside. I think I love my work so much that the work itself stimulates me. So I don't need to walk away from it. Um,
Wow. Wow.
but,
Wow.
but I want to speak about from the context of what is it that I need,
Mm,
and what I need, which refreshes me, stimulates me, encourages me, reaffirms me, is when there's support.
mm,
So at his school, I met this wonderful lady. She's one of the mothers at school. In fact, our kids
mm.
go to school together, same
Wow.
class, whatever. So she's been really incredibly supportive, and I think just that knowledge of her being supportive. In fact, last week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I was under so much pressure to deliver a strategy, and she was so kind to look after him. So he did sleepovers, and so that
Amazing.
that has been
Oh,
the thing that has relieved so
mm,
much pressure, from
mm,
me.
mm,
And you know that thing has actually again given perspective and
mm.
sobered me to the reality that a child needs a father and a mother.
Yeah.
We can
Yeah.
co-parent, but
Yeah.
my belief is that it is not the same.
It's
It is
not.
absolutely not the same.
Yeah.
So, so for me, that knowing that I have this kind of support. She's been extremely incredible. Sometimes I'm like, how do I say thank you? How do I thank you?
Mm,
For doing that. So for me, I think to answer your question, to highlight the key things I'm speaking about is just that support. And I think it then touches on the broader conversation around the kind of support that men generally need or look for,
mm,
in a woman, which is, a lot more feminine energy that is
yeah.
kind, supportive. I once heard someone say, this principle of, well, they didn't say this, this is what I'm saying now. The principle of opposite attract, it is true, where,
Mm,
when you're out there, it's like you need to be on, your testosterone is high, high energy, aggressive, uh, attacking, defensive. You're thinking about all these things. And when you come home, you want the complete opposite. You want to let your guard down. You want to relax and talk about things that don't add value to your career. You
mm,
want to talk about, lazy stuff. You want to talk
mm,
about what you see on TV.
mm,
So I find, based on my current situation of living with him, because it's just the two of us most of the time living with him, um, the thing that brings me energy is when I know mentally or psychologically that there's someone there. Um,
wow.
you which probably speaks to the idea of finding a partner ultimately.
Mm,
I
mm,
haven't been able
mm,
to find the right person where all the relevant boxes are ticked, including the supportive, including the, reaffirming.
yeah.
When you just want to hear that, you're amazing. That's all.
Mm,
I think we're
yeah.
easy like that, you
Yeah.
know, that you are the most brilliant person ever. Nobody can do what you do, all these
Mm,
beautiful, nice things. You're the only one. When you come in and then she's like, they need you. They need you. You know what, nah? This thing would
you
have
know
never
what? Let me tell you.
let me tell you.
Yeah.
I think you
Yeah.
forgot it. Let me tell you.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So I think for me, yeah, and be friends like that.
Mm,
There's nothing romantic there. It's
mm,
it's just, yeah. I think for me that if I'd have more of that, yo, my goodness, I'll be
yeah.
so
Mm,
energized, and then I think I'd be able to do other things.
mm,
Not necessarily that I do those things to refresh, but just
mm.
knowing that will then give me the energy and the strength to do other things.
Totally. Totally. Sure. Oh, I just love the way you answer and respond. It's it's beautiful to hear. It's so different, to be honest, because to what I was expecting to hear is, oh, go with I will go out with the boys and have a drink. I'll go for a sport and play golf,
Yeah.
or because that's what people do.
Mm,
And for you to say more support, goodness,
mm.
what it says to me is I'm not trying to run away from this and find a
Oh,
temporary solution.
oh, yes, yes, yes. That's
You hear
it.
that?
That's,
Yeah,
oh, yes, yes,
yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Oh, in fact, when you say that, you know what has helped me? And I've seen how most parents think. They go, this is my life, this is my bubble, and then there's my
Mm,
child. Oh my goodness, what am
mm,
I going? For
mm,
me, I've he's integrated into. There's no escape. He's
yeah,
not going
yeah,
anywhere. I'm not
yeah,
going anywhere.
yeah. It's
Which
not
is
a
why
distraction.
it's not a distraction. Exactly. So
Mm,
so in fact, but I used to be like that when he was with his mother, where if the mother say, okay, this weekend, I'll be like, oh, this weekend, you know. But now, which is why I've also integrated him into my life professionally. When we shot the African Bank TVC, he was there on set.
Wow.
I brought him on set. When I do interviews, I go with him on interviews. I've done interviews on ENCA. He was in studio.
Wow.
So he's part of this thing. And I think it has worked tremendously in that before he was integrated into my world, he never understood why I didn't have time.
Mm,
And this is a good thing or a bad thing, but since he's seen, how like he gets it, and I don't know if that's good or bad.
it
Um,
is good.
it is good,
It's
right?
good.
So
Yeah, it's a
he's
good
he's
thing.
seen it. He's and I've
Mm,
also seen the impact and the mind shift in him, and I think
mm,
this is a very powerful thing, which I don't
mm.
think we had as Black people. So my
Yeah.
dad used to work at a manufacturing thing at a plant. He can't bring me to the plant,
Mm,
uh, and I'm sure he might have thought that this is not a pretty job or a fancy job. Therefore, he was a backpacker, whatever,
mm.
at a CNA or at Con. He was just
Yeah.
you know there. But bringing him into my space, he can see the work. um you know um he can see it when he
Mm.
sees the TVC. Now he's like, I remember that scene. Oh, that scene when we were. Oh yeah,
Uh,
no. and
uh,
and and you can see the mind shift in that. I see adults when they're being interviewed on ENCA, they're like, oh my goodness, I'm on ENCA. For him, he's 9, right? He's 9. Of course, it's a big deal, but he's 9. When he sees ENCA, he's like, oh no, I've seen it. It's like,
wow.
so
Wow.
I think that's a powerful thing in that
Totally.
he can, these things are not out of touch or out of reach.
Mm,
Adults would be so excited to go onto Metro FM or Radio
yeah.
2000. He's
Yeah.
been there. He's like, oh no,
Wow.
Radio 2000,
Mm,
whatever.
mm,
So remember when I spoke about how raising him has sort of given perspective to what's actually more difficult. It's not the work.
mm,
It's,
mm.
I see a similar thing in him where he's like, no, these things are easy. You
Wow.
know, I can go
Wow.
there,
Wow.
and I think for me,
Wow.
that's one of the things I believe would be my best gift to him, to look at things and go, I've already been there. Oh, it's easy. Oh, you don't know? You just, let me show you. Let's go. So even
Wow.
if the people there don't know him, but the fact that he thinks that he can go there, that's
Wow.
powerful. That's
Totally. Sure. Sure. Exposure is a game changer, Bohosi. And I think
100%.
sometimes we underestimate the things that, those young people now are exposed to, or underestimate the things you're talking about now, just taking him on set and seeing that this is the TV ad. It's on TV now. It's not far from me. Growing up, we were never exposed. I mean, like you said now, you wouldn't even know what's going on in the lives of your parents or your dad's life. You just know they
No,
wake up and go to work and they're back.
of
And
course.
I think some of the traumas that we faced and some of the issues we're trying to deal with now is because there was never closure. So what it
Mm,
says to me is my son has closure. And that's why
mm,
he understands when dad says, give me 5 minutes, I'm in a meeting. He
mm.
gets it. It's
He
not
gets.
difficult and he's not feeling bad and he's not
Mm,
feeling disenfranchised. He knows dad is working. He understands it and it's brought that closure in him. It's healing, to be honest. And I
wow.
sometimes sit and think if my mom or my dad had brought me into their world, I think
Mm,
some of the things I struggled with, because to be honest, trauma and some of these healing issues we talk about is we didn't have closure. We're just looking for answers. We just
mm,
needed them to sit us on the table and say, the reason why this is like this is because of this. And you go like, oh. So, and I'll share a little bit here. Over the
yeah,
weekend, I was surprised because, well, I had a surprise visit from my uncle, my dad's dad, who
mm,
is 5 KZN. And from nowhere, I just got a call. I'm here in Midrand. Just come fetch me. What? Woo, why? How? And we had such a beautiful time where I sat him down and I said, I never got to understand my dad in this area, and
Mm.
that please tell me because you were his bestie. And I promise you, I received healing over this past weekend
Ah,
because we sat from like 4 p.m. until I think midnight. He was just
wow.
unpacking and telling me, that this age, this is what happened to him. And when because he was a firstborn and he had to look after us. And, when you saw him do this, it was because of this. This is the background history. And it brought so much healing and closure to me.
Mm.
So I think and I just realized that all I needed was reassurance and being
Wow.
brought into his world and him sitting me down and just talking to me and it brings closure. So what you're doing is absolutely beautiful, Dad, and kudos to you. Well done, and keep doing it. Because I know that sometimes it can be hard, especially when you have to take him into a workspace. People start looking, we're not there yet, and
We're
people
not.
can look at you. Yeah, no, we're not the, especially in corporate and it's like, hello,
Uh,
what is this you're doing here? And kids are kids. Sometimes they want to play and they can do, and some people will look at you funny, and I just don't get that. But I mean, keep doing what you're doing.
no,
Going
thank you
to
very
my question, because we're running out of time. That's why you see I'm speaking so quick.
much. Yeah.
And this is very interesting. I'm enjoying this conversation. Is you spoke about your dad, and I wanna, and I was sharing now also about my father. How is
Mm.
your relationship with your father or father figure influenced your parenting style? And are there any patterns you wish to break or that you've broken, or some of the patterns you wish you continued with, or that you wished you would have continued with?
Mm. I'll start by saying, you know, I'll tell you a quick story. I make this thing long-winded because I tell stories.
It's good.
Somebody was like, "No, you're a storyteller." I'm like, "Hey, some people feel like I'm going round and round in circles." But for the professional side, just to give you context, I was speaking to someone, in this world we live in, we send out proposals and do these things, and and then we don't get responses, and then we like,
Yeah.
Tinashe thinks is big, man. Why is she not responding? And there's a friend who had sent a proposal, and then they never got back to them. When they finally met months later, it was revealed that the reason they didn't respond, they lost a family member.
Mm,
Um, so that gives perspective on the idea that, on the other side, we might throw stones. Maybe not that dramatic, but we might cast judgment to say, she's not responding because you know she thinks she's busy. Country people are dealing with things, on the
mm,
other side. So with that, the idea is that when we move, we need to move with grace. We need to
mm,
be gracious with other people. Therefore, to answer your question, I don't think there's anything that I would necessarily want to break, because I think now I'm in a space where I think I understand, given the limited resources he had. I think he did a phenomenal job.
mm,
Um, and the thing that I took from him was being visionary and open-minded. Sometimes you think visions are grand things. It's
mm.
it's like what Elon Musk does.
Sure.
Sometimes it's purely just about having a vision for your child. So
And
he didn't have a lot, but he's a lifelong student, so he listens to other people. So that's one of the things that he gave to me, to listen to other people and hear other people, learn from
mm,
other people. So when I used to go to a school in the township, um, but then he heard about, like, my mother goes to, they've got a stock fair or society where they meet, whatever. one of the mothers there took their child to a certain school, and then my dad was like, "Hey, we also need to take Bogosi there."
mm,
Um, he didn't know, he didn't have the means,
mm,
but with that small salary, he did his ultimate best. He
sure.
sent me to that school, which led to another school, which
Mm,
ultimately led to where I am. I didn't go to the best of the best of the best of the school, but it was the best of what he could afford. So for me, to not have gone to school, but have the mind and the wisdom to listen to other people. I think that's what I take from him.
mm,
That's what
mm,
I take from him. So I don't think I want to say, yeah, no, I will change that. When I look back, he tried. We didn't have, a car at home. But the things, I used to be very salty about the fact that he never came to one of the sports days or one of
mm,
the things that happened. But our school was very far. You needed to take two taxis. You
mm,
know, as I grew older, I understood that during the week he was working, and
mm,
then the event happened on a Saturday, but he couldn't make it.
mm,
Growing up, the longest time I was like, why didn't you show up? Why didn't you show up? But growing up, and I think also being a father helps to give you
yes,
perspective, because now
yes.
you understand. It's like a lot of things are clicking. It's like, I get it. I get it.
Mm,
A lot of those moments where you're like, I get it. I get it. So there's nothing I would change. I think I would only say thank you, which I haven't done.
mm,
Um, but our relationship has gotten better. Where I think we only started hugging like 3 years ago.
man.
We never used to it's like the way it was set up, our parents are, it was never a thing.
Mm, mm,
Now we do it, but with my son it's like every day hugs and kisses. It's
yes.
like,
Yeah.
the relationship with my son is completely different to, but I understand it's not to say mine is
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
It's, I'm using resources and I'm acting and reacting based on my worldview. He was
Mm,
doing it based on his worldview.
mm,
um, there's so many lessons from him.
mm,
And I think, you remember the conversation I said about time with my son?
mm, mm,
My always had similar conversations. Three things he taught me. He doesn't really understand English that well, but he can speak, like,
yeah.
um, he taught me three words: aggressive, assertive, submissive.
Wow.
It was like, at home, you should never be aggressive with me or your mother.
Wow.
Outside, you must always be assertive. You must be confident. You must do these things.
Wow.
Submissive, you must never be submissive
Wow.
outside.
Wow.
So he always taught me things like, be your own man.
Sure.
He always used to say, be your own man. He's like, even when you walk out the gate,
Mm,
if you were planning to go right and all your friends are going left and they say, come, don't go to the left, continue
sure.
going right.
Wow.
So I think he had, such is. I think it's unfortunate where we never recorded these things, these conversations. They felt like, normal throwaway moments in
Mm,
life. But I think deep down, I think he's a teacher. He's a
mm,
storyteller.
mm,
So
mm,
yeah, I wouldn't change anything, because I think with this idea of moving with grace, I understand that he did his ultimate best. And I also view that from my worldview or from my
mm,
lens. It's
mm,
like, which is why I think I'm also gracious on myself, to say I am trying my absolute best.
mm,
Trying my
mm,
absolute best.
mm,
I don't know. Can I do better? Possibly, of course. I think we can all do better. But I think, yeah, man, I think I'm doing my absolute best. And therefore, he did his absolute best. So,
mm,
think if there's anything I would change was that I think I wish we had more happy moments, a lot more of the happy moments. Because I think also he was trying to be a parent, trying to
Mm,
provide. It's like
mm,
a lot. It's a lot.
mm, mm.
You know,
Sure.
I know that would
Sure.
be.
Wow. Wow. No, the way you explain things is amazing, man. I'm enjoying this conversation. I wish we really, really had more time. And
Me too.
you
Part two.
we should do part two. You're talking about he's a storyteller, he's creative, and we see it on you. I mean, he's definitely imparted something on you. So you can't fault the man. The man has done his work. You need to
I
take on the batting stick and move up. And see the great work that you're also doing. So it really is a reflection of what he's really imparted in your life. Um, you know, I just in 30 seconds, you spoke about more of the happy moments. And I feel like sometimes fathers think happy moments equals money. What is
Mm.
your thought? What is your thought on that in 30 seconds?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's money. Because sometimes when there is money, the happy moments are not there. I think for me, especially being with him full time, but I think the happy moments are when we are literally not thinking about the world, like literally close out everything outside of the world, work, school, and you just be in the moment. Like whatever you're watching, be in the moment. He's got like a grand laughter. Like when he laughs, it's like, ah, ha, 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 ha. For me, it's like those things.
Yeah.
Anything that can be bought for me is like a bonus, you know.
Mm,
So I can't rely on being a provider. It's like it's a tick box. It's done.
mm,
It's like okay, what else?
true.
So I think those happy moments when I see them, especially when I reassure him or when I give him the confidence that he's on the right track, or when he's genuinely happy.
Mm,
Um, and it's like it's simple like that, things like that, where he's an affectionate boy. Also, he will hug and say, I've got the best dad.
mm.
He hasn't said that in a while, so I'm not sure if I'm the best dad.
Father's Day is coming. Hold on. Goodness,
Yeah,
this
no,
is
no.
beautiful. Yeah. Bogosi, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for such an insightful conversation, open, transparent, so impactful and really just bringing a whole lot of revelation even to myself and a different perspective of seeing the world from a man's view. And you've definitely shown us that fatherhood can be redefined, which is of course the topic that we had for this episode of the Faith in Action podcast. In closing, please, I have two questions, and I hope you're going to be able to just
Okay,
put them together.
okay.
First one is, would you then consider fatherhood as a calling and the first calling, and something that people ought to say, if I've done fatherhood right, then I can safely say I can die because I've done what I needed
Mm.
to do on it. And then number two is just imparting your parting words to, current fathers that are doing it alone, aspiring fathers, young men that are going through stuff, that have families, just imparting a general word of fatherhood, or word of motivation, encouragement, a word of faith that you would want to share with our listeners, with our viewers, on this topic. So those two, if you can just sum
Okay.
them up together.
Okay. Yeah, on fatherhood being a calling, I think definitely. In fact, I've come to the realization that it's not the number of years that you are in a child's life. Ideally, you'd want to be in your child's life until they are an adult. But
Mm,
I think if I can do enough for, say, God forbid, I leave the earth when he's 15, if he's got the
mm,
right tools and the resources and the mindset to go,
yeah,
my
yeah,
dad is gone. I feel sad. It's terrible, but I can go on. For me, it's like my job is done. Versus
true.
him feeling like my life is over because my dad. So that means I wouldn't have done a good enough job to
Mm,
instill a certain level of independence. So I think definitely it is a calling, and I think we should, as parents, aim for when that day comes, should it come, whenever it comes, you've given them enough. And it doesn't have
mm,
to be money. I think mentally, emotionally, psychologically, if they're strong, job well done. And then the second one, what was the second one?
Parting words to the fathers to be, aspiring fathers, young men, and those that are doing it alone, of course.
I would say um, doing it alone is not the ideal situation. If you can please do. It's not the ideal situation. The ideal
Mm,
situation is a father, mother. So that was my whole thing.
mm,
I grew up like that and I wanted that. Unfortunately,
mm,
that's the situation. But ideally, so if you end up in a situation where you're doing it alone, I think you're gonna have to be very deliberate and discerning in finding someone. I think it is important. And the reason I say this is that it's not about you, it's
mm,
about the child.
mm,
So even if you feel like, hey, I can do it, hey, I'm there, I'm doing, it's not about you.
mm,
So I can see it with my son with this, sort of like the family relationship we have with the one of the parents. He loves the environment where there's a mother figure and there are other kids. There's a family, so there's a family thing happening there which he enjoys. He loves it.
mm,
Uh, so yeah, I would say we need to avoid single parenthood as much as
mm,
possible.
mm.
Avoid parenting. It sounds sexy, but it's not. Um,
Totally.
it's not about us.
Mm,
And then yeah, do your best. Always see how you can improve. Be present and active. And active means learning, and learning means improving. Do your best, and whilst you're doing your best, don't put yourself under pressure. The
mm.
manual is there telling you what it needs.
Sure. Jeez. Faith in Action podcast listeners and viewers, you've heard it for yourself from the man himself, Bogosi Motshegwa. I hope I'm pronouncing it right once again.
Yeah.
He is the chief strategist at Thinkerneur, and is the founder of the Human Summit. Sorry, 12 years of experience in the marketing, brand building, in entrepreneurship. He's got all the nuggets. And I think it's important that maybe Bogosi just share with us where the people can get a hold of you. Maybe there's a young man there that needs advice, that's heard you speak now and needs a bit of mentorship. I don't know if you have the capacity, but I think you're the right person to give that. Or those that want to learn the world of entrepreneurship, or someone is hearing you now and they're like, oh my God, I didn't realize that I'm not the only one in the situation. How have you navigated this? Where can the people get a hold of you?
On LinkedIn, Bogosi Motshegwa. And then on Instagram, it's Bogosi_M. And then I think those are the two platforms where I'm really active. And then maybe my email address as well, bogosi@thinkerneur.net.
Mm,
Yeah,
awesome.
so
Awesome.
LinkedIn, Instagram, but mostly I think I'll take you more seriously if you go through LinkedIn.
Thank God I found you there. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. so much, Bogosi, once again for really coming through to the Faith in Action podcast platform. We don't take it for granted. We appreciate your vulnerability, openness, and all that you've shared, this wisdom, the time away from your child and your work, that really demands that you be present and there, but you decided to come and share, this encouraging word and this wisdom with us. So really appreciate you. Thank you once again to all the listeners and viewers. This is the Faith in Action podcast, and we were here talking about fatherhood redefined. Absolutely love this conversation with Bogosi. And until we meet again on the next episode, from me, your host, Tinashe, it's bye for now. Goodbye, and thank you, Bogosi. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Tinashe Mujera. I'm an author, I'm a marketplace professional, and I'm a woman of God. I am a representation of tested faith. I represent my healed wounds that left ugly scars. This is the Faith in Action podcast that has been created to help you find the journey to your true self through conversations and lessons shared.